Did you know that nearly 1 in 3 people in the UK are living in poverty despite working full-time jobs? And shockingly, mental health problems are now affecting more than 1 in 4 adults every year. Yet the system meant to support them is at breaking point. What's happening to the UK? Is it really as strong as we think, or are there cracks beginning to show? From skyrocketing living costs to political chaos and a crumbling healthcare system, the UK is facing a crisis that's much deeper than anyone expected. And it's not just one problem. It's a web of interconnected issues that are rapidly spiraling out of control. Have you ever wondered how these challenges affect the future of the country? And more importantly, your future? In this video, we'll uncover the shocking truths behind 10 key reasons why the UK is in crisis right now, and how these issues are quietly shaping every part of life. From job insecurity to an aging population, Brexit's fallout, and the mental health epidemic, the nation is teetering on the edge of a tipping point. Stay with us till the end, because what you're about to hear could completely change your perspective on the UK's future, and yours. Do we have what it takes to turn things around, or is the UK on a path of irreversible decline? Keep watching to find out. Number 1. The cost of living crisis. The cost of living crisis in the UK is one of the most pressing issues that has left millions feeling the financial strain. In recent years, inflation has risen sharply, driving up prices on everything from groceries to household bills, making it harder for many to make ends meet. While inflation is a global phenomenon, the UK has been hit especially hard due to a combination of factors like supply chain disruptions, rising energy costs, and post-pandemic economic recovery challenges. One of the most significant impacts of this crisis is the soaring cost of energy. With household bills skyrocketing, millions of people are struggling to keep their homes warm, particularly during the winter months. The situation is exacerbated by the unpredictable energy market, which has caused some families to make difficult choices between heating their homes or buying food. In addition to energy, food prices have also spiked. Basic necessities like bread, milk, and vegetables have become far more expensive, leaving families with less disposable income to cover other expenses. This has led to increased levels of food insecurity, with more people relying on food banks to make sure they can feed themselves and their families. To cope with these challenges, many people have turned to budgeting strategies, cutting back on non-essential spending and looking for discounts where they can. However, this doesn't always offer enough relief. As wages fail to keep up with the rapid increase in living costs, people are increasingly feeling squeezed, with some even falling into debt. The cost of living crisis isn't just about numbers on a page. It's about real people facing everyday struggles to keep their heads above water. So how can we navigate this crisis? Stay tuned, as we'll dive into practical steps that can help you manage in these uncertain times. Number 2. Housing affordability. The housing affordability crisis in the UK is one of the most pressing challenges facing millions of people, particularly younger generations. With house prices and rent rates steadily climbing, many are finding it increasingly difficult to secure a place to live that is both affordable and suitable for their needs. Whether you're looking to buy or rent, the situation feels dire, especially for those entering the housing market for the first time. Over the past decade, house prices in the UK have skyrocketed, making home ownership an unrealistic dream for many, particularly in high-demand areas like London. In fact, studies show that the average house price has more than doubled in some regions, leaving many individuals and families unable to afford a deposit or mortgage payments. Even with government schemes designed to help first-time buyers, the price gap is too large for most to bridge. For those renting, the situation isn't much better. Rent prices have surged across the UK, particularly in urban areas where demand is highest. Renters are finding themselves paying more than they can afford for cramped, outdated properties, with little hope of being able to save for a future home. As wages stagnate and inflation continues to rise, many feel trapped in an endless cycle of renting, unable to break free into home ownership. The shortage of housing supply also exacerbates the issue, as new construction struggles to meet demand. Despite efforts by the government to build more affordable homes, the pace of construction remains far too slow to keep up with population growth and housing demand. With so many people unable to find affordable housing, many are being forced to look outside major cities for cheaper options, putting a strain on smaller towns and rural areas. This has created a ripple effect throughout the entire housing market, intensifying the crisis even further. Number 3. Healthcare strain. The NHS, once a proud symbol of the UK's commitment to universal healthcare, is now grappling with significant strain. The combination of underfunding, staff shortages, and ever-increasing demand has left the system stretched beyond its limits, impacting the quality of care that many people receive. As the population ages and medical advancements increase, the pressure on the NHS only grows, creating a crisis that cannot be ignored. One of the most noticeable effects of this strain is the increasing waiting times for medical treatments and appointments. People are waiting months, and in some cases, over a year, for routine procedures, cancer treatments, and specialist consultations. These delays can have severe consequences, with conditions worsening and resulting in poorer health outcomes. Studies have shown that long waiting times contribute directly to preventable deaths and declining quality of life for those affected. Moreover, staff burnout is a growing issue. NHS workers, including doctors, nurses, and support staff, are facing extreme pressure due to understaffing and rising demand. This burnout has led to increased staff turnover, with many healthcare professionals leaving the profession or going on long-term sick leave, further exacerbating the shortage of staff. The emotional and physical toll on workers is evident, and this vicious cycle is taking a toll on the healthcare system's ability to provide quality care. Funding shortages also continue to plague the NHS, with the government struggling to allocate sufficient resources to meet the growing needs of the population. While the government has made some commitments to improve funding, many argue that these investments are not enough to sustain the NHS in the long term. The mental health sector, in particular, is under-resourced. Mental health patients often face delays in getting treatment, with many waiting months or even years for counselling or therapy. In an increasingly stressful world, this lack of mental health support is one of the most concerning aspects of the NHS crisis. As the system continues to struggle, it's clear that the NHS needs a major overhaul to ensure it can continue to provide the level of care that the UK population deserves. Number 4. Energy prices crisis. The UK is currently facing an energy prices crisis, with costs rising to levels that many households can no longer afford. Whether it's heating during the winter or keeping the lights on, energy bills have become one of the largest expenses for families across the nation. The sharp increase in costs has left millions of people struggling to make ends meet, with many choosing between heating their homes or buying food. The crisis began when global events, including the war in Ukraine and supply chain disruptions, led to massive increases in oil and natural gas prices. As the UK relies heavily on these sources of energy, it has faced a significant impact. Energy suppliers, in turn, passed on these increased costs to consumers, pushing prices up by an average of 54% in 2022 alone. This was the highest increase in living memory, and it has put families under immense pressure. For many, the rise in energy prices has been a game changer. People living in poorly insulated homes have faced even higher bills, as energy inefficiency makes it harder to keep homes warm. Some individuals and families have resorted to drastic measures, like wearing extra layers of clothing indoors or limiting how long they leave heating on. Unfortunately, these coping mechanisms can't solve the problem long term. The UK government introduced measures like energy price caps and support packages, but these have not been enough to fully alleviate the burden. While these schemes help, they only serve as temporary relief. Without a long-term solution, energy poverty is likely to continue to rise, putting vulnerable populations, such as the elderly and low-income families, at even greater risk. The energy crisis is a wake-up call. It highlights the urgent need for energy independence and investments in renewable energy solutions to protect the UK from future price shocks and ensure that no one has to choose between warmth and survival. Number 5. Impact of Brexit. The impact of Brexit continues to reverberate across the UK, creating significant economic and social challenges that were not fully anticipated before the country's decision to leave the European Union. Although the UK officially left the EU in 2020, the consequences of that choice are still being felt today, from trade barriers to labour shortages and even the reshaping of international relationships. One of the most immediate effects of Brexit has been the introduction of trade barriers between the UK and its closest neighbours. With the end of free movement and single market access, businesses now face tariffs, customs checks, and additional paperwork. These new complexities have disrupted established trade routes and increased the cost of importing goods, particularly food and raw materials. As a result, many British businesses, especially small and medium-sized enterprises, are grappling with higher operational costs and delays in supply chains, contributing to inflation. The labour market has also been severely affected. The end of the free movement of workers from the EU has led to significant shortages in various sectors, particularly in healthcare, agriculture, and hospitality. Many EU nationals, who made up a substantial part of the workforce, have either left the UK or are no longer coming to fill these essential roles. This shortage has created a skills gap that is difficult to fill, leading to higher wages in some sectors but also slower economic growth overall. In addition to the economic strain, Brexit has also had political and social consequences. Tensions between the UK and the EU remain, particularly over the Northern Ireland Protocol, which has created friction between the UK and the EU over trade and border controls. The uncertainty surrounding Brexit has led to divisions within the UK itself, with regions like Scotland and Northern Ireland continuing to push for independence or closer ties with the EU. Brexit, while promised to restore sovereignty, has ultimately created a web of challenges that the UK continues to navigate. It's clear that the consequences of this historic decision are far-reaching, and the true long-term impact remains to be seen. Number 6. Unemployment and job insecurity. While the UK's unemployment rate may appear low on paper, the reality for many workers is a growing sense of job insecurity. The labour market has undergone significant shifts in recent years, with many finding themselves in precarious positions, unable to rely on stable, long-term employment. For a large portion of the workforce, temporary contracts, part-time work, and the rise of zero-hour contracts have become the norm rather than the exception. One of the biggest contributors to this job insecurity is the gig economy, which has expanded rapidly in recent years. While platforms like Uber, Deliveroo, and others offer flexibility, they often come at the cost of benefits like sick pay, pensions, or paid leave. Workers in these sectors have little job security, leaving them vulnerable to fluctuations in demand or changes in the market. This instability creates a constant cycle of uncertainty for individuals, making it difficult to plan for the future or access the financial stability they need. For those in traditional industries, automation and global outsourcing are threatening established roles. Many sectors, such as retail, manufacturing, and even customer service, are facing increased pressure to streamline operations or reduce costs by adopting technology or moving jobs abroad. As a result, millions of workers are being left behind, unable to keep pace with the rapidly changing job market. On top of these challenges, many workers are also dealing with stagnant wages. Despite the rising costs of living, wages have not kept up with inflation, leaving workers with less purchasing power. The gap between wages and living expenses has created a scenario where even full-time employees are struggling to make ends meet. Job insecurity is a silent crisis in the UK, with far-reaching implications for people's mental health, financial security, and quality of life. The government and businesses must find ways to address these issues by focusing on fair pay, job stability, and long-term employment solutions. Without significant reform, the future of work in the UK looks increasingly unstable for many. Number 7. Education system challenges. The UK's education system has long been considered one of the pillars of its society, but today it faces a multitude of challenges that are threatening its effectiveness and equity. From funding cuts to rising pressures on teachers, the system is struggling to keep up with the demands of an ever-changing world. These issues affect not only the quality of education, but also the opportunities available to students, further widening the social divide. One of the most pressing concerns is the underfunding of schools, particularly in disadvantaged areas. As government budgets shrink, many schools are being forced to cut back on essential resources. This includes reducing staff numbers, limiting extracurricular activities, and making do with outdated equipment and facilities. Students in these schools face a compromised education that often fails to prepare them adequately for the future. In addition, the teacher shortage has become an alarming issue. Many schools across the UK are struggling to recruit and retain qualified educators, particularly in subjects like maths, science, and languages. The increasing pressure on teachers to meet higher standards, manage larger classrooms, and handle students' emotional and mental health needs has led to widespread burnout. This shortage is compounded by the low pay and lack of career progression, which drives many talented educators out of the profession. At the same time, the pressure to perform in national exams, such as GCSEs and A-levels, has created a culture of stress for both students and teachers. The focus on standardized testing leaves little room for creativity or critical thinking in the classroom, stifling innovation and the development of well-rounded individuals. Furthermore, access to higher education is becoming increasingly difficult due to the rising costs of tuition fees and student living expenses. For many students from lower income backgrounds, the dream of going to university is slipping further out of reach. As these issues continue to grow, the future of the UK's education system looks uncertain. Reform is needed to ensure that all students, regardless of background, have the opportunity to thrive. Number 8. Mental health crisis. The mental health crisis in the UK has reached alarming levels, affecting people of all ages and backgrounds. While awareness around mental health has increased in recent years, the scale of the problem continues to grow, placing immense pressure on both individuals and healthcare services. Factors such as the COVID-19 pandemic, economic instability, and social isolation have only exacerbated the situation, leading to a surge in anxiety, depression, and other mental health disorders. One of the most concerning aspects of the crisis is the increase in young people seeking help for mental health issues. Studies indicate that children and adolescents are experiencing higher levels of stress, depression, and self-harm than ever before. The pressures of school, social media, and the uncertainty about the future have created a generation that is facing an uphill battle when it comes to mental well-being. Moreover, the lack of sufficient mental health services for young people means that many are unable to access the help they need, leading to prolonged suffering. For adults, the impact of the mental health crisis is equally devastating. The pressures of modern life, ranging from financial insecurity to job instability, have led to rising rates of anxiety and depression. Workplaces in particular are seeing an increase in burnout and stress-related illness, with many employees struggling to balance demanding schedules and personal lives. The COVID-19 pandemic has amplified these issues, with many people experiencing post-pandemic trauma and long-term effects on their mental health. Despite the growing need for support, the UK's mental health services are stretched thin. Waiting times for therapy and counselling have increased, and many individuals cannot access immediate care. Mental health treatment still carries a stigma, and people often feel reluctant to seek help for fear of judgment or discrimination. Addressing the mental health crisis requires a multifaceted approach, including better funding for mental health services, increased public education to reduce stigma, and greater support for vulnerable populations. Until these issues are adequately addressed, the toll on the nation's well-being will continue to rise, leaving many without the help they need. Number 9. Ageing population. The UK's ageing population is one of the most pressing demographic challenges the country faces today. As life expectancy increases and birth rates continue to decline, the proportion of older individuals in the UK is steadily rising. While this is a testament to improvements in healthcare and quality of life, it also brings with it a host of economic, social, and healthcare challenges that demand urgent attention. One of the most immediate impacts of an ageing population is the strain on the healthcare system. Older individuals typically require more medical care, including treatment for chronic conditions, surgeries, and long-term care. This places an increasing burden on the NHS, already under pressure from rising demand and limited resources. With a growing number of elderly patients and a shrinking working-age population, there are concerns that the NHS may struggle to provide the level of care needed to meet demand. At the same time, an ageing population also has significant implications for the economy. Older individuals are retiring at an unprecedented rate, leading to a shrinking workforce. This means there will be fewer people contributing to taxes and pension funds, while more people will be drawing on these resources. The UK's pension system, already under strain, could face severe challenges as the ratio of workers to retirees decreases. This demographic shift could ultimately place greater financial pressure on younger generations, potentially leading to higher taxes or cuts to public services. Additionally, an ageing population also raises questions about social isolation. Many elderly individuals live alone, with limited access to family or community support. This can lead to loneliness and mental health issues, further exacerbating the demand for healthcare services. To address these challenges, the UK will need to focus on policies that promote elderly care, encourage later retirement, and invest in technology and automation to offset labour shortages. Only with strategic planning can the nation manage the implications of an ageing population and ensure a sustainable future for all. Number 10. Political polarisation and instability. Political polarisation has become a defining characteristic of the UK's political landscape in recent years, leading to increased division and instability. The public's trust in political institutions has eroded, and the country is now facing an environment where even basic policies and decisions have become deeply contentious. This rising division has made it increasingly difficult to find common ground, with political discourse often descending into bitter conflicts between opposing sides. One of the most prominent drivers of political polarisation is the fallout from Brexit. The referendum on leaving the European Union exposed deep ideological divides within the UK, with stark differences in how the country should approach its future, both economically and culturally. These divisions have not healed, but have instead deepened, fueling animosity between pro-Brexit and pro-EU factions, and further splitting political parties. This rift has affected not only the national conversation, but also the workings of government itself, with political gridlock making it harder to pass meaningful legislation or reform. In addition to Brexit, the rise of populist politics has amplified political tensions. Charismatic leaders and movements often frame complex issues in overly simplistic terms, appealing to emotions rather than reason, and fueling anger and mistrust toward political elites. This has led to an environment where constructive dialogue and compromise are viewed with skepticism, and extremism gains traction. The media has also played a significant role in this polarization. The growth of partisan news outlets and social media echo chambers has created an environment where information is filtered through biased lenses, reinforcing pre-existing beliefs rather than encouraging open debate. As a result, Many people are increasingly isolated in their political views, making it harder to build consensus. Political instability, driven by this division, has led to a lack of confidence in government, creating an atmosphere of uncertainty. Whether it's dealing with public health crises, economic challenges, or international relations, the inability to work together is a major obstacle to effective governance. Until the UK finds a way to heal these divisions, the nation will continue to face political gridlock and instability that threatens its future. As we've seen today, the UK's crisis isn't just one isolated issue. It's a series of interconnected challenges that are slowly eroding the foundation of the nation. From economic instability and political division to mental health struggles and the strain on public services, it's clear that urgent action is needed. But the question remains, can the UK turn things around in time, or are we heading toward an uncertain future? The solutions won't be easy, and change won't happen overnight, but by raising awareness and demanding action, we can start to make a difference. It's up to all of us to push for real change and ensure a better, fairer future. If you found this video eye-opening, we'd love to hear what you think. Drop a comment below and let us know which of these crises you believe is the most urgent to tackle. And if you want more in-depth insights into what's really going on in the UK, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. It's just one click, but it helps us continue putting out valuable content just like this.